Hollow Creek was one of those nowhere towns in the middle of the US, a pit stop along the highway where no one stayed longer than they had to. I was down on my luck, recently fired, drowning in bills, and desperate for work. When I saw the gas station's Help Wanted sign, I figured, why not? Night shifts were easy, or so I thought. Just sit behind the counter, ring up a few customers, maybe mop the floor if I got bored. The manager, Old Man Wally, was a grizzled, chain-smoking relic from another era. He barely looked up from his crossword puzzle when I came in for the interview. "You got any experience?" he asked, exhaling a cloud of smoke. "Retail, yeah. A couple years at a convenience store back home." "Good enough. Don't steal, don't sleep on the job, and whatever happens, don't go out back between 2 and 3 a.m. Got it?" I laughed, thinking he was joking. "Sure." His eyes hardened. "I'm serious, kid. Lock the doors, stay inside." A weird rule, but I needed the money. I started that night. The first few hours were dull. A handful of truckers, some college kids buying beer and snacks, and an old woman who kept muttering under her breath as she paid for her gas. The radio played softly in the background, an old rock station fading in and out with static. Around 1:45 a.m., the place went dead. No cars, no customers, just me, the humming of the fluorescent lights, and the occasional creak of the building settling. At 2:10, the knocking started. It came from the back door, soft at first. I ignored it. Wally's words echoed in my mind, "Stay inside." But the knocking grew louder, insistent. "Hello?" I called. No answer. I checked the security cameras. The back alley was empty, but the knocking continued. My stomach twisted. Then I heard it, the voice. "Hey man, let me in. My car broke down. Just need to use the phone." Something about it was wrong. The tone was flat, emotionless, like someone mimicking a human voice. I hesitated, then grabbed the phone and called the sheriff's office. The line was dead. A chill ran down my spine. The knocking stopped. Silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then the security monitor flickered. The grainy image showed something standing just outside the back door. Not a man, not an animal, just a shape. Tall, thin, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Then it moved, jerky, twitching steps, like a marionette controlled by clumsy hands. My breath hitched. I bolted to the front door, locked it, turned off the lights. Maybe it would go away if it thought no one was here. The minutes crawled by. My heart pounded so loud I was sure whatever was out there could hear it. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., the knocking stopped. The security screen went black for a moment, then flickered back on. The alley was empty. I didn't move until the first rays of dawn peeked through the windows. The next night, I told Wally what happened. He just nodded, like he already knew. "You're lucky it didn't get in," he said. "What the hell was that?" He took a long drag of his cigarette. "Something old, something that ain't human. It comes every night, looking for a way in." "And you still run this place?" He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Kid, some places ain't meant to be abandoned. This gas station, it's one of them. You stay long enough, you'll see things you wish you hadn't." I should have quit then and there. But rent was due, and curiosity is a hell of a drug. So I stayed, and I learned the hard way that Wally wasn't lying. The knocking came every night. The voice changed, sometimes a woman, sometimes a child, sometimes a garbled, inhuman rasp. Each time, it tried a different tactic to lure me outside. "Help me, please, I'm hurt." "Sir, I lost my dog, can you help?" "Hey buddy, I know you're in there, just open the door." But I never did. Then, one night, I made a mistake. I had dozed off at the register. A loud bang jolted me awake. Something slammed against the back door. Hard. I checked the cameras. The alley was empty. Then, movement. The screen flickered, distorted. The thing was crawling up the walls, its limbs bending the wrong way, its face just an empty, featureless void. It stopped, turned its head toward the camera. Then it smiled, and I heard it inside the store. I didn't think. I grabbed the baseball bat from under the counter and ran. Not outside, just to the storage room, locking myself in. My hands shook as I dialed 911. This time, the call went through. Hollow Creek Sheriff's Department. "What's your emergency?" I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. "Something's in here." A pause. Then, in the same voice I'd heard every night, "We're on our way, just step outside." My stomach dropped. I hung up. Silence pressed in from the other side of the door. Then scratching, slow, deliberate, a whisper. "I see you." I don't know how long I sat there gripping the bat, heart pounding. But as dawn broke, the scratching stopped. The air felt lighter. The thing was gone. I quit that morning. Didn't even wait for Wally. Just left my keys on the counter and walked out. That was 6 months ago. I moved to a new town, found a new job. I try to tell myself it was just my imagination, sleep deprivation, paranoia. But sometimes late at night, I hear a knock at my window, and a voice too familiar to ignore. "Hey buddy, let me in." It started like any other job. The money was decent, and all I had to do was keep the place clean, ring up the occasional customer, and restock shelves. The first few weeks were uneventful. Just truckers stopping for coffee, night owls filling their tanks, and the occasional drifter looking for a cigarette. But then, things got weird. One night, around 2 a.m., I was sweeping the floor when I saw something move at the edge of the parking lot. It was a man, tall, thin, and dressed in a long coat. He stood by the road, just outside the reach of the streetlights. I waited for him to come inside, but he never did. Just stood there, watching. I called out, "Hey, man, you need something?" No response. He just tilted his head slightly, like a dog hearing a strange sound. I felt uneasy, but tried to ignore it. I went back inside, locked the door, and checked the security cameras. But when I looked at the screen, he was gone. I told myself it was nothing, just some drifter passing through. But the next night, he was there again. Same place, same stance, just staring. A week later, I was behind the counter, scrolling through my phone, when the store's old radio crackled to life. It wasn't on. I hadn't touched it. But suddenly, through the static, I heard a voice. "He's watching." I froze. The voice was distorted, mechanical, like it was being spoken through layers of interference. I turned the radio off. The knocking started 5 minutes later. A slow, deliberate knock echoed from the glass entrance. I looked up, expecting a customer. But it was him, the man from the parking lot. Except now, he was closer. His face was obscured by the flickering fluorescent lights, but I could see something was off. His arms were too long, his fingers too thin. He pressed his hand against the glass, his nails dragging down, making a terrible screeching noise. I backed away. "We're closed," I lied. The knocking stopped. For a long time there was silence, then a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the refrigeration units. "Let me in." I turned off the lights. I don't know why, but my instincts screamed that he could only see me if I let him. I watched from behind the counter, holding my breath. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there. Minutes passed. Then, with an unnatural jerking motion, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. The next morning, I told my manager, Rick. He shrugged it off. Probably just some tweaker. We get him sometimes. But when I checked the security footage, the man wasn't there. The automatic doors had opened. The knocking had echoed through the store. But on the screen, nothing. Just an empty parking lot. No man. No shadow. I felt sick. Either I was losing my mind, or something was very, very wrong with this place. A week later, another incident. A woman stumbled into the store just past midnight. Her clothes torn, her face streaked with dirt and blood. "Help me," she gasped. "He's coming." I rushed from behind the counter and locked the doors. "Who's coming?" Her eyes darted around wildly. "The man in the coat. He's not a man, he's..." She stopped mid-sentence, her body going rigid. Then, with horrifying slowness, she turned her head toward the security cameras. "He's here." The screens flickered. Static washed over the monitors. For a split second, I saw something, tall, inhumanly thin, standing at the far edge of the parking lot. Then nothing. When I turned back to the woman, she was gone. The bathroom door was open, swinging slightly. I checked inside, but there was no sign of her. She had vanished. I quit after the last incident. It was around 3 a.m. when the power went out. The store plunged into darkness. The emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie, red-tinted shadows. Then, the knocking started again. Not just at the front door, from the back room, the storage closet, even the ceiling. I grabbed my phone, tried to dial 911. No signal. The radio crackled again, and this time I heard my own voice. "He's watching." Something was inside with me. I ran. I didn't look back. I jumped into my car and peeled out of the parking lot, not stopping until I reached the next town over.